The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Alberta Canola Producers Commission, SAS Canola, and Manitoba Canola Growers.
Hello, I'm Dale Leftwich with Real Agriculture. Today I'm with Ian Epp. We are at the Canola Discovery Forum. How are you doing today, Ian?
Good. It's been a great day so far.
Ian is a canola agronomy specialist with the Canola Council, and so he works mostly with all kinds of questions about weeds and plant establishment and things like that. That's what the focus of the conference is. Ian, do you want to just talk a little bit about weed pressures and how it affects the canola crop, because it changes every year. New information comes along.
Yeah, weeds in stand establishment don't always seem like a logical fit, but there's a lot to consider when you're planning your stand establishment. We think about seed costs being a big issue for growers, or something big on their minds. We talk about seeding depth a lot, seeding speed. We don't always forget it when we're targeting certain plants per square foot. We don't always think about what that means as far as weed pressure. So the stand establishment, the optimized amount of canola plants per square foot, there's a little variability with canola, which is really good for us, but it's kind of dependent on having good weed control. So what happens if we don't necessarily have good weed control, whether that's a herbicide resistance issue? We know herbicide resistance is spreading across the prairies, getting worse as far as species and just the amount of fields. So if we don't have that optimal weed control, how competitive is our stand if we compromise it with lower seeding rates? So while lower seeding rates, the canola can branch out and can compensate to some degree, we do lose some of that competitive ability to outcompete weeds. So just that dynamic of, if I have a weedier field, should I maybe increase my seeding rate on that field just a little bit, or how competitive is it? Am I compromising my plant stand? Tough things for growers to kind of wrap their heads around, and it really does change year to year.
So one of the things that was pointed out was that if you've got a lot of space between your plants, you come in with whatever herbicide that is, and then like a low stand establishment, right? So then the weed is not quite killed. Now, if it was really a competitive crop with lots of soil coverage, that weed would often die because it couldn't compete in a weakened state. But if it gets a chance to survive and grow, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, so you run into problems. It's not just actually seeding rates or how many plants per square foot we end up, also just the spatial variation. So if we have all of these plants, 6 plants, and then they're in a nice tight little row, and there's a lot of black dirt in between, or a lot of space in between, there's a lot of opportunity for weeds to germinate, and germinate over a wide period of time there. So maybe we did get a good control with our first herbicide pass, but because the crop, there's such a wide row space, the crop hasn't canopied out, and now we need to come in with that second application of our herbicide. Every time you're adding, especially an in-crop herbicide application, you're increasing your selection pressure, which may lead to some resistance issues down the road. So not only is it how many plants per square foot we're targeting, but how they're organized in the field. If we can have them fairly equally distant apart, hopefully they'll cabbage out a little bit quicker. And a lot of weed germination is dependent on light. So if there's plants already out there germinated, out competing, they're covering that canopy, a lot of weeds won't germinate, or if they do, they'll germinate, but they won't be very successful. They won't compete for yield, and they won't produce as many seeds at the end of the year.
So another thing to think about then is one of the things that was discussed was this idea that in the United States, where they were starting to find resistance pop up very quickly, they were finding people who were using the same treatment, in some cases up to 6 times in 1 year. So if you're treating something with a group 1 wild oat and you treat it 1 year and then not for another couple years, that's one thing. But if you end up coming back in several times, you want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so the in-crop herbicide period, that's where you have the most selection pressure. So pre-burn or some of those later applications do select for herbicide-resistant weeds, but that in-crop, when a lot of weeds are germinating, that's the biggest time. So anything we're doing there that's making it worse, a wide row spacing, non-competitive crops, using the same herbicide repeatedly, both in the same year, if we have multiple applications on the same crop, or even from year to year, it does have a huge effect on that selection pressure. So anything in that time, it's a critical time to rotate herbicides, mix modes of action, and make our crop most competitive. Relying on just one of those things is good, and I think farmers across Western Canada have gotten pretty good at maybe mixing modes of actions or rotating them year to year. But those things alone aren't enough. Maybe it is making sure our stand is competitive, really competitive. So it's, instead of the herbicide doing 100% of the weed control, maybe it's only doing 70 or 80% because we have a nice canola is a nice competitive crop. That is one thing we have across Western Canada. A lot of our crops are really competitive, so just making sure we're maximizing that competitiveness and making it work for our advantage.
Is there anything else you want to add about weed resistance? Because it's the kind of thing that it seems like every year there's something new to be learned about weed resistance, and as we lose these kinds of chemicals or these kinds of products, it becomes more and more difficult to get new ones to replace them.
Yeah, we know that there hasn't been a new mode of action, a new true mode of action since 1990. So we know that there isn't really a silver bullet on the horizon right now. There are some good things maybe coming down the pipeline, but the key for growers now, we keep seeing year after year herbicide resistance spreading as far as new weed species, new herbicide resistant cases. The key thing is just working all these little tools. We don't have a silver bullet kind of in our back pocket. There isn't a one kind of catch-all thing. So it is all of these small things. It is a lot of the tool. We talk a lot about tools in the toolbox, but that really is the approach we have to do to maximize using 5 or 6 different things every year to kind of increase our competitive ability, to reduce that selection pressure. Anything we can to make our crop a little bit more competitive makes a big difference at the end of the year.
Okay, that's very good. I just want to thank Ian Epp for being with us today at the Canola Discovery Forum. Thanks a lot, Ian.
Thank you.